Welcome. Today I'm going to tell you about my mother-in-law's cruelties. To support me, please like the video and subscribe. My name is María Elena Rodriguez, I'm 24 years old, and exactly 8 months ago I married Carlos Mendoza, the love of my life. I thought that by getting married I had found my place in the world, but I never imagined that my life would become a living nightmare inside this house I now call home. Everything started very differently. I met Carlos at the university where we were both studying business administration. He was the perfect guy, handsome, intelligent, caring, and with a smile that could light up any room. During our 2 years of dating, our relationship was like a fairy tale. Carlos always treated me like a princess, brought me flowers, wrote me romantic letters, and made me feel like the luckiest woman in the world. His mother, Dona Carmen Mendoza, seemed at first like a charming lady. She was 52 years old, had been widowed for 5 years, and Carlos was her only son. During our courtship, she always received me with a smile, prepared my favorite tea, and told me funny stories about Carlos's childhood. "You're perfect for my son," she would tell me while stroking my hair. He finally found a good woman. The wedding was beautiful. Dona Carmen seemed genuinely happy, crying with emotion during the ceremony and hugging me saying, "Now you're my daughter, María Elena. I love you like a daughter." I remember that moment so clearly because it was the last time I heard genuinely caring words from her lips. The first problems began during our honeymoon. Carlos and I had planned a romantic trip to Cancun for a week, but Dona Carmen called constantly. The first day she called us 3 times just to know if you had arrived safely. The second day it was 5 calls because she felt lonely. The third day, Carlos was already visibly annoyed, but he kept answering because she's my mother, María Elena, I have to take care of her. Our honeymoon became a constant series of interruptions. Every romantic moment was cut short by the sound of the phone and Dona Carmen's distressed voice on the other end. "Carlos, mijo, my chest hurts," or "Carlos, the washing machine broke down," or "Carlos, I had a nightmare about you." There was always an emergency, always a reason why her son had to be available to her 24 hours a day. When we returned from the trip, things got worse. Carlos had decided that we would live in the family house temporarily while we saved for our own house. The house was large, a 2-story construction in an upper-middle-class neighborhood. Dona Carmen assigned us a room on the 2nd floor, but quickly established that the rest of the house was still her territory. The first weeks were tense but manageable. Dona Carmen had specific rules for everything: meal times, use of the television, who could use the kitchen and when, even what kind of music we could listen to. "This is my house," she would say with a smile that no longer reached her eyes, "and here we follow my rules." Carlos, of course, saw nothing wrong with this. "It's her house, María Elena," he would tell me when I tried to talk about my discomfort. "We have to respect her rules until we have our own place." But I was beginning to notice that Dona Carmen treated me differently when Carlos wasn't present. The first real incident occurred on a Tuesday morning, about a month after we moved in. Carlos had left early for work. He had an important meeting at 7 a.m. I was in the kitchen preparing my breakfast when Dona Carmen came down the stairs. Her expression was completely different from what she showed when Carlos was home. "What are you doing in my kitchen?" she asked me with a cold tone she had never used with me before. "Good morning, Dona Carmen. I'm just preparing some oatmeal," I replied, trying to maintain a friendly tone. "I don't remember giving you permission to use my kitchen so early," she said, approaching me. "Besides, that's my special oatmeal, the one I bought for my breakfast." I was confused because it was normal oatmeal that I myself had bought during the previous week's shopping. "Excuse me, but I think this is the oatmeal I bought on Saturday. Are you contradicting me in my own house?" Her voice rose slightly. Are you calling me a liar? No, of course not, Dona Carmen. There was just a misunderstanding. The misunderstanding is you, she interrupted me. The misunderstanding is thinking that because you married my son, you now have rights in this house. This is still my house, and you're just a guest. I was speechless. The change in her behavior was so drastic that I thought maybe she was having a bad day. I decided to apologize and retreat to my room, thinking things would improve when Carlos returned, but that night, when I told Carlos what happened, he minimized the incident. Oh, Maria Elena, you know how mothers-in-law are. She's adjusting to having you in the house. Give her time, you'll see that everything will improve. Things didn't improve. In fact, they progressively got worse. Dona Carmen developed a very clear pattern. When Carlos was home, she was the perfect mother-in-law, caring, attentive, inclusive. But the moment Carlos walked out the door, she transformed into a completely different person. The comments started subtly. Your hair looks unkempt today, Maria Elena. Is that how you're going to receive my son when he comes back from work? Or that skirt is too short for a married woman. What will the neighbors think? Each criticism came accompanied by a cold smile that didn't reach her eyes. Then came the additional rules that only applied to me and only when Carlos wasn't present. I couldn't use the house phone without her permission. I couldn't watch television in the main living room. I couldn't invite my friends to visit me. I don't want strangers in my house, she would say, even though my friends had visited the house several times during our courtship without any problem. The situation intensified when Dona Carmen began assigning me specific household tasks. At first they seemed like reasonable requests. Maria Elena, could you help me wash the dishes? But they quickly became demands. Maria Elena, you're going to clean all the bathrooms today. And I want them to be spotless. When Carlos came home, I tried to talk to him about these situations, but Dona Carmen always had a perfect explanation. I'm just teaching Maria Elena how I like the house to be maintained, mijo. It's important that she learns, don't you think? Someday she'll have her own house to maintain. And Carlos, my dear Carlos, always took his mother's side. She's right, love. It's good that you learn these things. My mom has a lot of experience managing a house. But what really broke my heart was when I began to realize that Dona Carmen was actively manipulating the information that reached Carlos. If I had a bad day and was sad when he got home, she immediately invented a story about how I had been irresponsible or disrespectful that day. Carlos, mijo, today Maria Elena didn't want to help me with the cleaning. I told her it was important to keep the house tidy, but she told me she was too tired. I don't know, maybe she's not used to working in the house. These conversations always occurred when I was in another room, but I could hear them clearly. And when I tried to defend my version of events, it always sounded like I was making excuses or attacking his mother. The weekends became my personal nightmare. Carlos often had extra work or met with his friends, leaving me alone with Dona Carmen for hours. Those were the times when I really began to see her true personality. Sit here, she would order me, pointing to a specific chair in the living room. We need to talk. These conversations became hour-long sessions where she systematically criticized me. My appearance, my personality, my way of speaking, my family, my education, nothing escaped her scrutiny. I don't understand what Carlos saw in you, she would tell me with a cruel smile. You're so ordinary. My son could have had any woman. Beautiful women, successful women, from good families. And instead, he chose this. At first I tried to defend myself, to explain my feelings, to find a middle ground. But every attempt at communication was met with more cruelty, more manipulation. Dona Carmen had perfected the art of psychological warfare. Do you know how many women have asked me about Carlos? She continued. Dr. Ramirez's daughter, my friend Mercedes's niece, even the elementary school teacher. All classy women, women who would know how to treat a man like my son. These conversations always ended with the same warning, but of course, what we talk about here stays here. There's no need to worry Carlos with these topics, right? He has enough stress at work. And so, little by little, Dona Carmen built an invisible prison around me. A prison made of secrets, manipulations, and fear. Fear that if I told Carlos the complete truth, he wouldn't believe me. Fear that if I insisted too much, I would destroy my marriage. Fear that maybe, just maybe, Dona Carmen was right and I really wasn't good enough for her son. The morning that changed everything started like any other Tuesday morning. Carlos got up early, showered, had breakfast quickly, and said goodbye to me with a tender kiss. I'm going to be very late today, love, he told me while adjusting his tie. I have an important presentation and then a business dinner. I probably won't be back until 11 p.m. Okay, my love. Have an excellent day, I replied, hugging him. Take care of my mom, okay? Sometimes she gets a little melancholy when I'm away for a long time. If I had known what awaited me that day, I would have run away from that house at that very moment. After Carlos left, I stayed in bed for a few more minutes, enjoying the tranquility. It was 7:15 a.m. and the house was silent. I thought maybe I could have a peaceful morning, maybe even call my sister or read a book. Those thoughts vanished abruptly when I heard Dona Carmen's heavy footsteps coming up the stairs. Her steps had a determined, almost military rhythm that immediately put me on alert. María Elena, she shouted from the hallway, even though she was only a few meters from my door. Get up right now. I got up quickly and opened the door. Dona Carmen was standing in front of me with an expression I had never seen before. Her eyes shone with an intensity that scared me. Good morning, Dona Carmen. Is there a problem? The problem is you, she said in a low but threatening voice. The problem is that it's 7:30 in the morning and you're still in bed like a lazy woman while I, a 52-year-old woman, have been up since 5 a.m. working in this house. I didn't know I needed to get up at that time. Carlos never told me. Carlos, she interrupted me, raising her voice. Everything that comes out of your mouth is Carlos. Don't you have a brain of your own? Can't you think without my son telling you what to do? I was speechless. The aggressiveness in her voice was completely new, even by the standards I had experienced before. Come down right now and prepare my breakfast, she ordered. I want scrambled eggs, fresh tortillas, refried beans, and coffee. And I want it ready in 20 minutes. Of course, Dona Carmen. I'll be right down. And María Elena, she added, turning around when she had already started going down the stairs. Today you're going to learn how things really work in this house. There was something in her tone that made me feel a chill run down my spine. While I was getting dressed quickly, I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. I went down to the kitchen and started preparing breakfast as quickly as possible. Dona Carmen sat at the kitchen table, watching my every move with a critical look. You're beating the eggs too fast. They're going to become rubbery, she commented. I reduced the speed. Now too slow. They're going to get cold before you finish. No matter what I did, everything was wrong. When I served breakfast, she took a bite and made a face of disgust. This is terrible. The eggs are dry, the tortillas are cold, and the coffee is bitter. Is this how you cook for my son? I can prepare something else if you don't like it. No, you're not going to waste more food. You're going to eat this horrible breakfast you prepared, and then you're going to clean the entire house. And when I say the entire house, I mean the entire house. For the next 4 hours, Dona Carmen had me cleaning every corner of that house. It wasn't normal cleaning, it was systematic torture. Every time I finished a room, she found something that was wrong. "There's dust here," she would say, running her finger over surfaces I had just cleaned. "Do it again. These windows aren't bright enough. The floor isn't mopped properly. I can see marks." By 12 noon, I was exhausted. My hands were red and irritated from the cleaning chemicals, my back hurt from being bent over for so long, and I hadn't eaten anything since the night before. "Dona Carmen, could I rest for a moment? I feel a little dizzy." "Dizzy?" She laughed cruelly. "You feel dizzy from a little honest work? What kind of woman are you? My grandmother worked in the fields 12 hours a day and never complained. I just need a glass of water. Water is earned by working. When you finish cleaning the house completely, then you can drink water." That was the first time I really feared for my physical well-being. The expression on her face wasn't just disgust or frustration. It was pleasure. She was enjoying my suffering that I continued cleaning until 2 p.m., when Dona Carmen finally declared that the work was acceptable, barely. She allowed me to drink water and eat a piece of stale bread. "Now," she said, sitting across from me at the kitchen table, "we are going to have a serious conversation." What followed was the most humiliating hour of my life up to that point. Dona Carmen proceeded to systematically destroy my self-esteem, my confidence, and my sense of personal worth. "Do you know why Carlos really married you?" She began with a fake smile. "It wasn't for love, I can assure you of that. It was because you're easy. Because you don't cause him problems. Because you're so insignificant that he can do whatever he wants without worrying about you." My eyes filled with tears, but I tried to maintain my composure. "Carlos loves me," I managed to say with a trembling voice. "Love?" She laughed. "Silly girl, that's not love. That's convenience. My son is handsome, intelligent, successful. He could have any woman he wanted. Do you really think he would choose someone like you for love?" Each word was like a stab in my heart, but the worst part was that a small part of me was beginning to wonder if maybe she was right. "Look at your hands," she continued, pointing to my red and irritated hands. "Look at your hair. Look at your clothes. Is this what my son deserves when he comes home? A woman who looks like a maid?" "I was cleaning because you asked me to. I didn't ask you anything. I ordered you, which is different. And I did it because someone has to teach you your place in this house." She got up and walked around the table until she was standing behind me. She put her hands on my shoulders with a grip that was too strong to be comforting. "Your place in this house is to do what I say, when I say it, how I say it. Do you understand?" I nodded, too scared to speak. "I can't hear you." "Yes, I understand," I whispered. "Good. Because if you don't understand, if you decide to be rebellious or problematic, well, it would be a shame if Carlos discovered what kind of woman you really are." "What do you mean?" "I mean it would be terrible if he discovered that his wife is lazy, disrespectful, and talks badly about his mother. It would be devastating if he knew that you think he made a mistake marrying you." "But I never said that, didn't you?" Her grip on my shoulders tightened. "Because I clearly remember a conversation where you said exactly that. In fact, I think I have a very good memory for these kinds of things." At that moment I completely understood what she was doing. She wasn't just threatening to make up lies about me, she was threatening to destroy my marriage. "Dona Carmen, please, Dona Carmen, please what? Please don't tell her son the truth? Please keep your secrets. Please, don't do this. I love Carlos. I would never do anything to hurt him. Then you better make sure you don't give me reasons to have to protect him from you, right? It was past 3 p.m. when she finally allowed me to go up to my room. I sat on the bed, trembling from exhaustion and emotional shock. My body hurt, but my heart hurt more. I felt completely alone, trapped in a situation that seemed to have no way out. I tried to call my sister, but remembered that Dona Carmen had established that I couldn't use the phone without her permission. I thought about leaving the house to call from a payphone, but I was afraid she would tell Carlos that I had left without permission. I stayed in my room until 4:30, when Dona Carmen yelled from downstairs, "María Elena, come down right now." When I went down, I found the living room completely messy. Cushions thrown on the floor, magazines scattered everywhere, ashtrays overturned, even though no one in the house smoked. "Look at this mess," said Dona Carmen with feigned indignation. "How could you leave the living room in these conditions?" "But I cleaned the living room this morning. It was perfect when I finished." "Are you telling me that I messed up my own living room?" At that moment I realized that she had created the mess intentionally, just to have an excuse to punish me more. "No, I didn't say that. Clean up this mess. And this time do it right." While I cleaned the living room for the second time that day, Dona Carmen sat in her favorite chair, watching me with obvious satisfaction. "You know what, María Elena? I think we are finally starting to understand each other. You do what I say, when I say it, and everyone is happy." "Yes, Dona Carmen. And if you're a good girl, if you learn your lessons well, maybe I won't have to have difficult conversations with Carlos." At 5:30, when I finished cleaning the living room, I thought I could finally have a moment of peace. But Dona Carmen had other plans. "Now you're going to prepare dinner. Carlos is going to be late, so you'll only cook for me. What would you like me to prepare? Surprise me. But make it something decent, not like the disaster you prepared for breakfast." I spent the next hour in the kitchen, preparing chicken in mole with rice and fresh tortillas. It was one of my favorite dishes, something I knew how to cook well. I hoped that maybe, if the food was delicious, Dona Carmen would soften a bit. When I served dinner, she took a bite and immediately made a face of disgust. "This is terrible. The mole is too salty, the chicken is dry, and the tortillas are burned." I tasted the food discreetly. It was perfect. I knew it was perfect. But I understood that no matter how well I cooked, she would always find something wrong. "I'm sorry, Dona Carmen. Can I prepare something else?" "No. You're going to eat this horrible food, and you're going to think about what you did wrong while you eat it." I sat across from her and ate in silence, while she watched me with a cruel smile. It was the first real meal I had had all day, so despite the humiliation, I was grateful to be able to eat something. "Do you know what bothers me most about you?" she said suddenly. "No, Dona Carmen. It's that you act like you're a victim. Like I'm the bad guy in the story. But the reality is that all of this is your fault." "My fault?" "Your fault for thinking you could enter this family without earning your place. Your fault for being so weak and pathetic. Your fault for not being the woman my son deserves." Each word was like a blow, but what hurt me most was the twisted logic of it all. Somehow, she had managed to convince me that maybe she was right, that maybe I had caused this situation somehow. After dinner, she ordered me to wash all the dishes and clean the kitchen completely. When I finished, it was almost 8 p.m. "Now," she said, "you're going to go up to your room and you're going to think about everything you learned today. And María Elena, I hope tomorrow will be different." "Different how?" "I hope that tomorrow you completely understand what your place is in this house, without me having to teach it to you again." I went up to my room feeling completely broken. I sat on the bed and cried for the first time all day. I cried for my situation, I cried for my loneliness, I cried for the fear I now felt constantly. But what scared me most was that a part of me was beginning to believe the things Dona Carmen was telling me. What if she was right? What if I really wasn't good enough for Carlos? What if he had married me for the wrong reasons? It was 8:45 when I heard the doorbell ring. The sound of the doorbell made me startle. From my room, I heard Dona Carmen's footsteps heading toward the front door. My heart began to beat faster when I recognized the familiar voice of our neighbor, Mrs. Lopez. "Good evening, Carmen. How are you, dear?" "Oh, Mrs. Lopez. What a pleasant surprise. Come in please." I remained paralyzed in my room. Mrs. Lopez was a woman of about 60 years old, very kind and talkative. She had been a neighbor of the Mendoza family for more than 10 years and had known Carlos since he was a teenager. During our courtship, she had always been very affectionate with me, telling me how happy she was that Carlos had found a good girl. I heard their voices approaching the living room, right below my room. Instinctively, I moved closer to the window, trying to listen to the conversation. "And how is the newlywed?" asked Mrs. Lopez with her warm, maternal voice. "Oh, she's very well. María Elena is upstairs resting. She's had a very busy day," responded Dona Carmen with a sweet tone I hadn't heard all day. "How good. The first months of marriage can be so exciting but also exhausting. Is she adapting well to married life?" "Oh yes, perfectly. She's such a sweet and hard-working girl. Today she was helping me with cleaning the house, and then she prepared a delicious dinner. She's exactly the daughter-in-law I always dreamed of having." Hearing those words caused me a strange mixture of relief and confusion. For a moment, I wondered if maybe I had misunderstood everything that had happened during the day. Maybe Dona Carmen really appreciated me and it had just been a difficult day for both of us. "I'm so glad to hear that," continued Mrs. Lopez. "You know I've always adored that girl. From the first time Carlos brought her home, I knew she was special. They have that beautiful chemistry, don't they?" "Absolutely. They're perfect for each other." Their voices became clearer, which meant they had moved closer to the area below my window. I decided to stay very quiet so I could hear better. "Carmen, I'm going to confess something to you," said Mrs. Lopez, lowering her voice a bit. "At first I was a little worried about how you two would get along living in the same house. You know how dynamics between mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law can be." There was a brief silence before Dona Carmen responded. "Worried? Why?" "Well, it's just that some neighbors had mentioned to me that sometimes they heard raised voices during the day. Nothing serious, of course, but you know how people are, always speculating." My heart stopped. Had the neighbors heard Dona Carmen's screaming during the day? Were there more people who knew what was happening? Raised voices. Dona Carmen's voice sounded genuinely surprised. "I can't imagine what they're talking about. María Elena and I get along wonderfully. Maybe what they heard was the television, or maybe when we were moving furniture. Of course. I told the ladies that it was surely something like that. You know how people are, always looking for drama where there isn't any." "Exactly. María Elena is like the daughter I never had. We couldn't be happier together." At that moment, I heard Dona Carmen's footsteps quickly climbing the stairs. Her voice became louder when she shouted, "María Elena, come down for a moment, dear. Mrs. Lopez is here and wants to say hello to you." My blood froze. Throughout the entire day, every interaction with Dona Carmen had been hostile, cruel, humiliating. And now I had to go down and act as if everything was perfect. "I'm coming," I responded, trying to make my voice sound normal. I looked at myself quickly in the mirror. My eyes were swollen from crying, my hair was disheveled, and my clothes were wrinkled and stained from the cleaning products. I tried to fix myself as best as possible in a few seconds, but it was obvious that I had had a difficult day. When I reached the door of my room, Dona Carmen was already there waiting for me. What I saw in her expression terrified me completely. Her eyes had a cold and threatening intensity one had never seen before. She approached me and, in a whisper so low I could barely hear it, she told me, "Listen to me very carefully, María Elena. You're going to go down those stairs with a smile on your face. You're going to greet Mrs. Lopez as the perfect daughter-in-law you're supposed to be. You're going to confirm that we've had a wonderful day together, and that we are like mother and daughter." Her hand closed around my arm with a force that caused me pain. "And if you say a single word that contradicts what I've already told her, if you give the slightest indication that something is wrong." She stopped and looked directly into my eyes. "Don't say a word to the neighbors or I'll kill you." The way she said those last words made me tremble. It wasn't a dramatic exaggeration or an empty threat. There was something in her voice, in her expression, that made me completely believe she was capable of fulfilling that threat. "Do you understand?" she whispered. I nodded, too scared to speak. "I can't hear you." "Yes, I understand," I managed to whisper. "Good. Now smile." I forced myself to smile, even though it felt like my face was going to break from the effort. More convincing. I widened the smile, trying to make it seem genuine. "Better. Now, let's go down and you're going to be the perfect daughter-in-law." We went down the stairs together. Dona Carmen had completely transformed her expression. Now she looked like the caring and proud mother-in-law she had been playing for Mrs. Lopez. "Here's my dear daughter-in-law," she announced with apparent joy when we entered the living room. "María Elena, dear." Mrs. Lopez got up and gave me a warm hug. "How good to see you. You look a little tired. Are you okay?" For a moment, I thought about that question. Was I okay? Definitely not. Could I tell her the truth? Absolutely not. I looked quickly at Dona Carmen, who was watching me with that fake smile but threatening eyes. "I'm perfectly fine, Mrs. Lopez. Thank you for asking. It's just been a very productive day." "That's wonderful. Carmen was telling me that you've had a great day together." "Yes, that's right. Dona Carmen has been teaching me many things about how to maintain a house. It's been very educational." Technically, I wasn't lying, but every word tasted bitter. "How good. It's so important that the women in the family support each other. And how are things going with Carlos? Is he enjoying marriage?" "Carlos is very happy," I replied, and that at least was a complete truth. "He works a lot, but he always comes home in a good mood." "That's because he has such a wonderful wife waiting for him," intervened Dona Carmen, putting her arm around my shoulders in a gesture that probably seemed affectionate but made me feel claustrophobic. "And such an understanding mother-in-law," I added, forcing another smile. "Oh, how beautiful. I'm so glad to see families that get along so well. These days, it's increasingly rare." The conversation continued for about 20 more minutes. It was the most difficult performance of my life. Every question from Mrs. Lopez required a carefully calculated answer. I had to project happiness and satisfaction while inside I felt completely destroyed. Dona Carmen played her role perfectly. She constantly praised me, told invented stories about sweet moments we had shared during the day, and even mentioned how proud she was to have me as a daughter-in-law. "María Elena prepared a delicious dinner today," she said at one point. "Chicken in mole that was finger-licking good. She really has a natural talent for cooking. That was the same food she had declared terrible and had forced me to eat while humiliating me. But now, in front of Mrs. Lopez, it had become a natural talent. How wonderful! I'll have to ask you for the recipe, María Elena. Of course, Mrs. Lopez. Maybe she noticed something in my expression, something in my body language that indicated that not everything was well. Thank you, Mrs. Lopez. I'll remember that. And Carmen, how lucky you are to have such a charming daughter-in-law. I know. I'm very fortunate. After Mrs. Lopez left, we stood at the door for a few seconds. Dona Carmen maintained her smile until our neighbor's figure completely disappeared in the distance. The change in her expression was instantaneous and terrifying. The warm smile faded, replaced by a look of cold fury. She closed the door with more force than necessary and turned toward me. "Very good," she said with a dangerously low voice. "That was acceptable." "Thank you," I murmured, not knowing what else to say. "But let me clarify something, María Elena. What you just witnessed, that visit from Mrs. Lopez, is exactly how things are going to be from now on." "How are things going to be?" "When there are people present, especially neighbors or family, we are the perfect mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. We are like mother and daughter, we adore each other, and everything in this house is harmonious and happy." She walked toward me until she was so close I could feel her breath on my face. "But when we are alone, when there are no witnesses, things are going to be exactly like they were today. Do you understand the difference?" "Yes." "And if you ever think of contradicting the public version of our relationship, if you ever give any indication that something is wrong in this house." She stopped and smiled, but it was a smile that made me feel nauseous. "Well, it would be very sad if Carlos discovered what kind of wife he really has." "What do you mean?" "I mean it would be devastating for him to know that his wife is a manipulative liar who makes up stories about his mother to cause problems in the family." "But I'm not." "You're not what?" "You're not a liar? Because you just spent half an hour lying to Mrs. Lopez about what kind of day we had." The twisted logic of her argument left me speechless. She was right that I had lied, but I had lied because she had threatened me. "Besides," she continued, "who do you think Carlos is going to believe? His wife of 8 months, or his mother who raised him, loved him, and cared for him for 28 years? The answer to that question was obvious, and we both knew it. Now, you're going to go up to your room and you're going to stay there until Carlos returns. I don't want to see you, I don't want to hear you, I don't want to remember that you exist. And if Carlos asks me why I'm in my room, you'll tell him you had a wonderful day with me, that you're a little tired, and that you decided to rest early. Any problem with that?" "No, no problem." "Good. And María Elena, I hope you use this time to reflect on everything you learned today. Because tomorrow is going to be another day, and I hope it will be even more educational." I went up the stairs feeling like I had the weight of the world on my shoulders. Once in my room, I sat on the bed and tried to process everything that had happened. Mrs. Lopez's visit had been a terrifying revelation. I realized that Dona Carmen wasn't just cruel, she was intelligent, calculating, and extremely manipulative. She had built a perfect facade that she presented to the outside world, while the reality was completely different. Worse still, now I understood that I was completely trapped. If I tried to tell someone what was happening, who would believe me? Dona Carmen had been the respectable widow of the neighborhood for 5 years. She was known as a devout, hard-working, and caring woman. All the neighbors adored her, and I was just the new daughter-in-law, the stranger who had entered their established world. While I waited for Carlos's return, I realized that my life had fundamentally changed in a single day. I was no longer just a wife temporarily living with her mother-in-law. I was a prisoner in my own home, subjected to a regime of psychological terror that I had to keep secret. The most terrifying thing of all was that I was beginning to understand that this was just the beginning. It was 11:15 p.m. when I finally heard the familiar sound of Carlos's car in the driveway. My heart filled with relief and terror at the same time. Relief because my husband had finally returned, but terror because I didn't know how I was going to be able to act normal after the day I had lived through. I heard the front door open and Carlos's cheerful voice echoing throughout the house. "I'm home. Where are my two favorite women?" Immediately I heard Dona Carmen's quick footsteps going down the stairs, and her voice instantly transformed into the warm and maternal tone she had perfected. "Mijo, how good that you're back. How did your presentation go?" "Excellent, Mom. I think we got the contract. And how are you two? Where's María Elena?" "She's upstairs resting, poor thing. We had a very busy but wonderful day. We were cleaning the house together, cooking, chatting. It was like having a daughter at home." From my room, I could clearly hear the entire conversation. Every word from Dona Carmen was technically true, but presented in a way that completely distorted reality. "That's great. I'm so glad you're getting along so well. Carlos, your wife is a treasure. She's hardworking, respectful, caring, exactly the daughter-in-law I always dreamed of having." "Mom, that makes me so happy. I knew you two were going to adore each other." I heard his footsteps coming up the stairs toward our room. I quickly dried my tears and tried to arrange my expression into something that looked normal and relaxed. "Love." Carlos opened the door softly. "Are you awake?" "Yes, my love. How did it go?" Carlos approached the bed and gave me a tender kiss. I immediately noticed his expression of concern when he looked at me more closely. "Are you okay? You look a little tired." "I'm fine. It's just been a long day. My mom told me you had a very nice day together. That makes me very happy." "Yes, it was educational." Carlos sat on the bed next to me and took my hand. His eyes showed genuine concern. "María Elena, be honest with me. How do you really feel living here? Are you happy?" That question hit me like lightning. It was exactly the opportunity one had been waiting for all day. Carlos was here, he was asking me directly about my well-being, and I could tell him everything, but then I remembered Dona Carmen's words. Who do you think Carlos is going to believe? His wife of 8 months, or his mother who raised him, loved him, and cared for him for 28 years? And I remembered the threat. "Don't say a word to the neighbors or I'll kill you." "I'm adjusting," I finally said. "It's different from what I expected, but your mom has been very instructive." "Instructive? What do you mean?" "She's teaching me many things about how to maintain a house, about family traditions, about how to be a good wife." Carlos smiled and squeezed my hand. "That's wonderful. My mom is a very wise woman. She's managed this house alone for 5 years since my dad died. She has a lot of experience to share." "Yes, she definitely has a lot of experience." "And you get along well? There's no tension or problems?" That was my second chance. I could tell him the truth at that moment. I could tell him about the screaming, the humiliations, the threats, the forced labor. I could explain how his mother transformed into a completely different person when he wasn't present, but while I was forming the words in my mind, I could hear Dona Carmen's voice from downstairs, talking on the phone with someone. "Yes, Rosa, María Elena and I had a beautiful day together. She's like the daughter I never had." Carlos chose very well. It was as if she was monitoring our conversation, subtly but effectively reminding me of the official version of events. "No, there's no tension," I told Carlos. "Your mom and I are finding our rhythm." "I'm so glad to hear that. You know that you two are the most important people in my life. I couldn't be happy if you didn't get along." Those words were like a stab in my heart. Carlos was expressing exactly the feelings that Dona Carmen had predicted and had been exploiting all day. "I understand, my love. And I want you to know that I'm going to do everything possible to get along with your mom. You're incredible, you know that? Many women would have had problems living with their mother-in-law, but you're being so mature and understanding." If he had known how immature and understanding I felt inside at that moment, Carlos changed clothes and prepared for sleep, telling me about his day, his meetings, his plans for the future. It was the normal and loving conversation we always had, but I felt like I was watching my life from the outside. "You know what, love?" he said as he lay down next to me. "I think this situation of living with my mom is going to be better than I thought. It's obvious that you two are going to be very good friends." "Yes," I murmured. "Very good friends." That night I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake until very late, listening to Carlos's peaceful breathing next to me, thinking about everything that had happened and trying to understand how I had gotten to this situation. I went over every moment of the day. The morning screaming, the endless hours of cleaning, the humiliations during meals, the psychological threats, the forced performance in front of Mrs. Lopez, and finally the impossibility of telling the truth to my own husband. I realized that Dona Carmen had orchestrated everything perfectly. It hadn't been a day of impulsive cruelty, it had been a calculated demonstration of power. She had shown me exactly how far she was willing to go, had established the rules of the game, and had demonstrated that she had complete control of the narrative. But what terrified me most was understanding that this was only the first day. Dona Carmen had clearly said she expected tomorrow to be even more educational. What did that mean? How far was she willing to go? At 3 a.m., I finally managed to fall asleep, but my dreams were filled with nightmares where I ran through endless hallways while a voice screamed at me that I would never be good enough. The next morning came too soon. At 6:30 a.m., I heard Carlos's familiar footsteps getting ready for work. He said goodbye to me with a soft kiss, trying not to wake me completely. "Have a good day, love. Take care of my mom." "You too, my love. Have a good day at work." After Carlos left, I stayed in bed for a few minutes, enjoying the last moments of peace before another day of torture began, but this time, something was different. Instead of immediately hearing Dona Carmen screaming, the house remained silent. 7 o'clock passed, 7:30, 8 o'clock, and there were no signs of life from downstairs. Finally, at 8:15, I got up and cautiously went down the stairs. I found Dona Carmen in the kitchen, calmly preparing her breakfast. When she saw me, she smiled, not the cruel smile I had seen yesterday, but a genuinely warm smile. "Good morning, María Elena. Did you sleep well?" "Good morning, Dona Carmen. Yes, thank you." "I'm glad to hear that. Would you like some coffee? I just made a fresh pot." I was completely confused. Was it possible that yesterday had just been a bad day? Maybe Dona Carmen had reflected during the night and realized she had been too hard on me. "Yes, I'd love some coffee. Thank you." She served me a cup of coffee in one of her good cups, the ones she normally reserved for special visitors. She even offered me sugar and cream. "María Elena, I want to talk to you about yesterday." My heart raced. Was she going to apologize? Was she going to explain that she had had a bad day and that things were going to change? "I think yesterday was a very important day for us," she continued. "It was the day we finally established how things are going to work in this house. Or maybe not. I think we now understand perfectly what our roles and responsibilities are, right? Yes, Dona Carmen. Good. Because I want you to know that I have no intention of repeating yesterday's lessons every day. That would be exhausting for both of us. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, still smiling that smile that now gave me chills. But I want to be completely sure that you learned what you needed to learn. What did I need to learn? Your place in this family. Your place in this house. And what's going to happen if you ever forget what that place is? She got up and walked to the window, looking toward Mrs. Lopez's house. Mrs. Lopez called me last night after Carlos went to bed. She wanted to thank me for the charming visit yesterday. She told me how happy it made her to see such a united and harmonious family. She turned toward me. She also mentioned something interesting. She told me that some of the other neighbors had been worried about some noises they had heard during the day. But after her visit, she was able to assure them that everything was perfectly fine at the Mendoza house. The message was clear. The neighbors had heard what happened yesterday, but Mrs. Lopez's visit had been enough to convince them there was nothing to worry about. That made me think, continued Dona Carmen, about how important it is to maintain our family's reputation. The Mendozas have always been a respected family in this neighborhood. We've never given reasons for gossip or speculation. I understand. Do you really understand, Maria Elena? Because I need to be sure you understand that what happens in this house stays in this house. That family problems are resolved within the family. That a good wife protects her husband's and her family's reputation. Yes, I understand. Excellent. Because if ever, for any reason, someone started to doubt the happiness and stability of this family, well, it would be very easy to determine who was the cause of those rumors. The threat was subtle but effective. If anyone ever suspected something was wrong, I would automatically be blamed for causing problems. Now, she said, returning to the table with a completely different smile, let's talk about more pleasant plans. This afternoon my sister Rosa is coming to visit us. She's going to want to get to know you better and hear all about your new marriage. Your sister? Yes, my younger sister. She's a very observant woman. She likes to ask many questions and really get to know people. I'm sure you two are going to get along very well. The way she said observant made me feel like this visit was going to be another test, another opportunity to prove I could maintain the facade. Is there anything specific I should know about her? Just be yourself, Maria Elena. Be the happy and grateful daughter-in-law that you are. Tell her how wonderful it is to be married to Carlos, how well you and I get along, how happy you are living here. Of course. And Maria Elena. Rosa has known all the girlfriends Carlos has had over the years. She has very strong opinions about what kind of woman is suitable for her nephew. The implicit message was clear. Dona Carmen's sister was going to be another judge of my worth as a wife, and my performance during her visit would have consequences. The rest of the day passed relatively normally. Dona Carmen maintained the friendly tone from the morning, but I could feel the underlying tension, the constant threat that at any moment she could change again. At 3 p.m., Sister Rosa arrived. She was a woman of about 48 years old, thin, elegant, with a penetrating look that immediately made me uncomfortable. So you're the famous Maria Elena, she said when Dona Carmen introduced me. I've heard so much about you. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Rosa. The pleasure is mine, dear. Carmen has told me that you two have become inseparable. For the next 2 hours, Rosa interrogated me about everything: my family, my education, my plans for the future, my opinions about marriage, even my domestic skills. Every question felt like an exam I had to pass. Dona Carmen watched the entire interaction with a satisfied smile, occasionally adding comments about how wonderful I was as a daughter-in-law. María Elena prepared chicken in mole yesterday that was absolutely delicious. She lied without any problem. She really has a natural talent for cooking. How good. Carlos has always liked good food very much, responded Rosa. At the end of the visit, Rosa seemed approving. Carmen, I think Carlos chose very well. María Elena seems to be exactly the type of woman he needs. Traditional, respectful, and obviously she adores you. Yes, we are like mother and daughter, confirmed Dona Carmen. When Rosa left, I realized I had passed another test. I had successfully maintained the facade of the perfect daughter-in-law, had confirmed the public version of my relationship with Dona Carmen, and had gained the approval of another important family member, but every test I passed made me feel more trapped. Every lie I told, every fake smile I gave, every confirmation of my happiness made it harder for anyone to believe me if I ever decided to tell the truth. That night, when Carlos returned from work, he greeted me with enthusiasm. My mom told me you met my Aunt Rosa today. How did it go? Very well. She's a very interesting lady. Did you like her? Because she called me at work and couldn't stop praising you. She said you were exactly the wife she had hoped I would find. I'm glad I made a good impression. María Elena, you have no idea how happy this makes me. My family means everything to me, and knowing they're accepting you so completely, it's like a dream come true. That night, as Carlos slept next to me, I reflected on my situation. I realized that Dona Carmen had won. She had established a perfect system where I was simultaneously her victim and her accomplice. Every day I kept the secret, every fake smile I gave, every confirmation of our wonderful relationship made me more responsible for maintaining the lie. She had created a psychological prison where the walls were made of my own silence, my own complicity, and my own fear, but that night I also made a decision. I wasn't going to let Dona Carmen destroy me completely. I was going to find a way to survive, to maintain my mental sanity, to protect my marriage, and maybe, eventually, to find a way out. I didn't know how or when, but I knew I had to be smarter than her. I had to learn to play her game better than she played it, because if I had learned anything in these 2 days, it was that Dona Carmen was a formidable opponent. But I had also learned that I was stronger than I had thought, and this war had barely begun. 3 months later, when I finally found the courage and the evidence necessary to tell Carlos the complete truth about his mother, he confessed to me that he had begun to suspect something was wrong. The small changes in my personality, my constant nervousness, my way of avoiding certain topics, everything had created doubts in his mind, but that's another story. The story of how a woman found her voice and her strength, even in the most difficult circumstances. The story of how true love, in the end, always finds a way to overcome manipulation and fear.